This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Feeling stressed? Take a moment for yourself with Heyday. Stroll through rows of golden wheat, tend to cute barnyard animals, and discover the joys of a digital farm retreat. You don't have to hop in a car or catch a plane. Escape to the farm at the tap of a finger. With Heyday, you're not just tending to a farm, you're tending to yourself. Heyday. Search Heyday, that's Hay space DAY, in your favorite app store. Heyday is a free-to-play mobile game and offers optional in-app purchases and random rewards.
I'm Julia Turner, and this is the Slate Culture Gabfest Tom Cruise Nearly Died, So You Would Like This Movie edition. It's Wednesday, May 28th, 2025, and this week we'll be discussing Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, starring Tom Cruise and directed by his longtime collaborator, Christopher McQuarrie. This is this final installment, which cleaned up at the box office this weekend and will be the most successful opening to the Mission films to date. Bring the series to a satisfying conclusion. We will reckon with that alongside Dana Stevens, Slate's film critic. Next, we turn to Sirens, the juicy new Netflix series starring Meghan Fahey and Millie Alcock as sisters in conflict over their father's illness, with Julianne Moore playing Alcock's ethereal billionaire boss and best friend. We'll discuss the show and its take on sisterhood, responsibility, and class with Slate senior editor Rebecca Onion. Then we dive into Morgan Wallen's new album, I'm the Problem. By most measures, Wallen is the most popular man in American music. We'll try to puzzle out why with Slate's music critic, Carl Wilson. Steve is out sick today. Get well soon, Steve. So we've actually got a rotating third seat, as you just heard. But with me throughout will be a guest host, Amy Nicholson, film critic for the LA Times and host of the podcast Unspooled. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here. Good morning.
So glad to have you here for a whole show.
I know. Let's do it.
Gonna be a treat. Mission Impossible Final Reckoning is the 8th and supposedly last installment in Tom Cruise's death-defying franchise, and the 4th directed by Christopher McQuarrie. As in its immediate predecessor, Dead Reckoning, the villain this time is AI, an entity called The Entity that's threatening to launch all the world's nukes at once for reasons that don't really matter that much. Before we dive in, we will listen to a clip from the trailer in which we will hear a table full of government suits. You probably recognize Nick Offerman's voice in there as they examine Ethan Hunt's file before deciding once again whether to task him with saving the world.
CIA Black Vault break-in.
Am I reading this correctly? The Kremlin bombing?
In fairness, the bomb was actually meant to kill him.
He gassed a security briefing.
That was just 2 months ago.
All right, joining us for this segment, back from her week off to save the bacon while Stephen languishes with a cold compress on his head, is Dana Stevens. Thank you so much for hopping on and saving the day, much like Ethan Hunt.
Yes, like him, I cannot be stopped. I cling to the podcast as if it were a World War II biplane.
Dana sprinted to the mic with her arms slicing the air. She ran through the streets of Brooklyn to get to her own kitchen somehow, and also is dangling on a metal wire from a helicopter probably while we record this. It's incredible sound design that you can't hear the rotors going. Okay, one thing I love about that clip is it highlighted one of the distinguishing features of this movie, about which I think you guys disagreed, which is the first hour is essentially a ton of montages of all of the things that Ethan Hunt has ever done, which I believe you, Dana, found leavening and you, Amy, found leaden. So Dana, why don't we start with you? Tell us what you made of this film, and in particular, it's the more unusual structure of its first hour.
Yeah, I mean, to start off with the specific feature that you're asking about, right? I mean, I cannot make the case and will not make the case that this should be anyone's first Mission Impossible movie. That would be a very confusing and off-putting experience. And it is true that the first hour is dotted throughout. I think there's at least 2 of them. There may be 3 with these sort of YouTube supercut style flashback montages to the previous 7 films in the series. And these do not function. I don't think they're meant to function as context setting or, they're not actually last week on Mission Impossible, right? They're not setting you up with storyline stuff. They're just kind of giving you hits of that Mission Impossible feeling and sort of a memory of the many, many famous faces that have cycled through the series, but really just second-long glimpses at those people. Ultimately, this is a completely ridiculous way to construct a story, but it is a very good way to do fan service and evoke nostalgia for those who have enjoyed this series over the last 30 years. So yeah, even though I can completely understand that it is not narratively helpful to structure a movie like that, it still kind of got me in the Mission Impossible zone. And what you're really in the zone for is the big action set pieces, which we'll talk about later. But I do think it's worth starting off by noting that this series is, I can't think of quite another equivalent. Maybe, Amy, you can match me with some. But in this last couple decades of constant reboots and IP mining and sequels and prequels and spin-offs and basically taking every single successful movie and finding ways to monetize it into a expanded universe. I can't quite think of another franchise that's operated how Mission Impossible has, which is just same protagonist all the way through, right? A lot of the same supporting characters as well. Sort of the core team has not changed in many movies now. It's just a franchise that has plodded on, or rather run on with its hands slicing the air Tom Cruise style for 29 years straight. So whether or not this really is the final one, that is something of an accomplishment, especially when you consider that the now about to turn 63-year-old Tom Cruise is still doing his own stunts. And from what I have seen watching background featurettes on this movie, that's not an exaggeration. There may be safety equipment that's been digitally blotted out so that Tom Cruise survives the shoot. But I don't actually think it's an exaggeration that he is doing this stuff himself, which is quite extraordinary. And on that note, I wanted to jump to Amy because Amy, I feel like we've buried the lead on this. Oh, you should have started on this because you wrote a book about Tom Cruise back in 2014 when there were only far fewer. I think Ghost Protocol was the last Mission Impossible movie up until you wrote that book. And I'm wondering, as somebody who's done a lot of thinking about Tom Cruise's specific star persona, whether you also have a kind of feeling of affectionate nostalgia for this franchise as it wraps up.
Oh, I mean, I very much do adore this franchise overall. And I think what you're describing is exactly right. Like, it is a film franchise structured like a TV series, which I think is what drew Tom Cruise to want to do this project in the first place. Like, this is his first franchise that he ever did in his entire career. He waited over almost 15 years before he became an action franchise guy. He turned down Top Gun 2 in the 80s. Like, you did not want to do that. And then he was like, if I'm going to do a franchise, it's going to be on my terms. And he liked Mission Impossible because it was based on this idea that you always have a new mission. There's always something happening. There's always something changing. You don't have to really carry that much of a through line from like episodes 1 through 7, which are all standalone.
Yeah. So it's not just like a TV series. It's like an episodic TV series rather than a serialized one.
Very much. And what I really admire about like the first 5 Mission Impossibles in particular is that he made a point of like just switching up directors. So every single Mission Impossible felt totally different. And there's this looseness to it. The first one was directed by Brian De Palma. I think it has the most like just stunning, pure, simplistic, terrifying set pieces where you're just holding your breath the whole time. And then there's the John Woo one where he's like, it's some Yahoo romantic leading man, which I don't like at all. And there's pigeons, of course, but he's like, sure, John Woo, put your pigeons in. And then he's like, J.J. Abrams, make me a family man. Make me care about my wife. Sure, why not? And then in the fourth one, he's just like, make me a cartoon, Brad Bird. I'm going to run around and go up and down the Burj Khalifa. And I love the flexibility of that. Like, it was an Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise centered franchise with a generosity towards its directors, like a sense of flexibility and freedom, which is why I found the McQuarrie ones to be a bit more of a slog, because it's like, care more, have a little bit more of a plot. Like, we're going to make you know 7 before you watch 8. And to me, I felt like this 8th one, all those montages, it was so busy celebrating Mission Impossible movies that it never actually became a Mission Impossible movie, except in tiny little blips of action.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I split the difference between you two. I was astonished at how bored I was for the first hour. Like, I am so susceptible to being entertained. Like, my attention is so arrestable that I almost never am not completely swept away in watching a movie, even if I later think, God, that was terrible. Like I'm just like a T-Mobile commercial will like grab me and make me cry. Like my attention is very gettable by anything on screen. And I was literally like clock watching, like when does this movie going to start? Like the combination between the montages and then just the sort of the self-seriousness, which like obviously Tom Cruise takes himself very seriously in ways that have had consequences for his career and the way we perceive him. But he also has this like lightness and charm on screen. And these movies have always felt lighter on their feet to me and a little less full of like turgid exposition. And you're right, Dana, that these montages don't serve as exposition. They serve as kind of like hype reels or something. Like they're sort of like, remember how cool it was when we did this? And it's like, I don't know. So I was despairing basically for like literally almost falling asleep. Like at one point I walked to the back of the movie theater and just like stood against the railing there to like stay awake. And then it starts like about 60 minutes in, it starts and they actually start pursuing the thingamajig that they need. And suddenly they're in the Arctic or they're on a submarine or then they're below the water on a different, like trying to get something out of a different submarine. And then they're inside that. Like the second half of it to me, like basically where I split the difference is the bad first hour to me did not ruin the fact that the second hour and 40 minutes is like a pretty great Mission Impossible movie. Like then I liked it. I don't know why they did it. Like in general, they seem pretty self-aware and pretty responsive to audience stuff. I mean, they do spend time with the beloved characters, including the Ving Rhames character, who's been a stalwart all the way through. And Benji, the Simon Pegg character, is back. There's a couple highlights from earlier films. Angela Bassett is back as the president. Maybe they're trying to give those characters their due. We spend a bunch of time with one of them in the beginning. I don't know. The two huge stunts that Tom Cruise does, one retrieving a thingamajiggy from a submerged submarine that is in the process of tumbling over itself and falling deeper and deeper. And then the second one where he has to do wing walking on, there's a pair of biplanes. It's funny to look back on the scene where the villain is like, and I have a second one for backup. And it's like, you have a second one to make this stunt work. Like, who even is the other guy who's like flying the second plane out and why? But anyway, once you get into the action, it delivers, I think.
I agree that it delivers for sure. Yeah. I think what's strange is this is a movie that the villain is AI, which is so perfect for Tom Cruise. He's like a guy who does everything himself, believes in like human sweat and ingenuity as a movie star who I think is trying to make sure that there's a sense of humanity that doesn't get lost, that he never gets pixelated out of being the most important thing in the frame. But the editing and the tone of the movie feels like it's got this like God's eye AI look to it, right? Like it feels like an omniscient, strange movie that's like pulling from all Mission Impossibles at once and can show you time in the past, present, and future and all these editing montages. It felt like the most inhuman Mission Impossible for a movie that was about we must destroy the things that are turning us into inhuman people. Like, what did y'all think of the dialogue? Because I was losing my mind with the way that the dialogue was constructed, where you have rooms of, I don't know, 7 people in suits under fluorescent lighting, trading off lines like, and then you go get the thing, but then there's this problem, and you'll have to know about this, and blah, 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 blah. Like it was either some sort of strange Brechtian exercise, or like he just wanted to make sure every single actor had at least 5 lines. But it was the weirdest thing. Nobody had a conversation in the film.
Yeah, it's very expository dialogue, delivering descriptions of what has to happen next. I mean, the movie is too long. There's no question in my mind that it is at least an hour too long. I probably enjoyed that first hour more than someone would who doesn't have a sense of affection toward the franchise. But yeah, the dialogue is pretty terrible. The movie exists really in order to say goodbye to these characters and to have big action set pieces. And that submarine one that Julia briefly mentioned, I thought was just spectacular. It could almost have been just a freestanding 20-minute long adventure movie in itself.
Yeah, I actually even wrote in my review that I felt like there were times where that was trying to outdo Titanic, where they were watching Titanic and like, what can we do to have something as staggering as like this vertical wall of water that you see?
It's really effective. And the fact that there's no music in that sequence, or very little, there might be a little bit of ambient sort of thrumming or something like that, but it really is just relying on you getting to know this physical space, knowing what Tom Cruise has to accomplish within it underwater in this sort of timed fashion. And I don't know. I mean, I think I'm just still impressed enough with the idea of analog filmmaking for a sequence like that I didn't find it AI generated. There may have been parts where the dialogue felt that way, but the movie itself didn't seem cynical. It seemed like it was made with a lot of craft and care.
Amy, you had a line in your review about thinking of Cruise as a Charlie Chaplin for this century, the notion that he's the kind of representative of the way of making films that we come into the century with. And I thought that was interesting, especially given Dana's studies and work on another famous avatar of early 20th century filmmaking, famous for his physicality. But talk a little bit more about that idea.
Yeah, I feel like when you watch Tom Cruise in action, and I don't even just mean on screen, but doing the whole red carpet thing, doing the promo thing, going to San Antonio, Texas to promote Mission Impossible, which Dana and I are both from, and we can testify to what a big deal it is for anybody to show up in San Antonio, Texas ever, that he does the work of being the face of what a movie star is right now. And that I can imagine a future where 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when we think about like this period of movie making, that he is the face that represents like gigantic studio efforts, being the last movie star, which I will still argue that I think he is in the way that like a classic movie star was as we grew up, somebody who can open a movie, any movie, that's not based on IP, that I feel like feels a pressure to keep cinema alive more than I would say any of his contemporaries, more than Brad Pitt, more than Julia Roberts, like more than Julianne Moore. Like he's going to keep the cinema going, happening. He's going to bear that weight and like do these giant movies. And I am hoping that this period of that is about to end. Because I think like he and Christopher McQuarrie have filmed this tag team in like the post-cancellation-ish wave-ish of Tom Cruise from 2005, where Tom Cruise, I feel like in my imagination of things, went to him and was like, give me my last big hits. I need to prove that I'm still existent, that I wasn't canceled by jumping on the couch, even though he didn't really jump on the couch. He stood and he jumped off. Give me those hits that prove I'm still number one. And then maybe I can go back to being an interesting actor again. Like in the years that he has been working with Christopher McQuarrie, I think it's easy to forget that he was a guy who got nominated for 3 acting awards, 3 Oscars, boom, 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 right in a row for Born on the 4th of July, Jerry Maguire, and Magnolia. And now we think of him as man who risks death for our amusement. And that's not who he was. And I'm really ready for this period to end and for him to go back into acting with real dialogue.
All right. Well, the film is Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. I think you should go see it. I think you wouldn't mind if you showed up an hour plus into the runtime, but it's pretty cool to see the conclusion of this incredible thing he's made. Dana, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again in our Plus bonus segment when we grill Amy about her time at Cannes.
All right, talk to you later.
If there's one thing to learn from the entertainment industry, it's just how easy it is to earn a reputation, even if it doesn't reflect who celebrities really are. For example, everybody thinks that Discover is a card that isn't widely accepted, but in reality, it's accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Yeah, 99%. So maybe now you'll think twice before judging a book by its cover. Unless it's a celebrity cookbook, in that case, judge away. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
All right. Before we move on, the business, as mentioned, we are going to take advantage of the fact that Amy has just returned to us from La Croisette. Both of you probably know how to say that better than
La
me.
Croisette sounds good to me.
You thrust your hand out like you were holding an imaginary baguette and you're going to hit me over the head. So I think it works.
Yes, vehemence, I think, is key to pretending to be French. Amy has just returned from the Cannes Film Festival, and she will report back on all of it. Any highlights to tease, Amy?
Well, given what we just talked about, watching a woman have a chihuahua in a pink shirt with Tom Cruise's face on it, try to shove it in his face on the red carpet, definitely a highlight.
Did he grin at the chihuahua?
I think he studiously ignored making eye contact with the chihuahua, which was easy because she was pointing it at him rump first, because that's how you could see his face.
Strange choice. Amazing. If you're not a Slate Plus member, you can sign up today at slate.com/culture plus. Members get ad-free podcasts and lots of bonus content like the Slate Plus segment I just mentioned. You'll also get to hear members-only programming on other Slate shows like Slow Burn and the Political Gabfest. Plus, members get unlimited access to all the great writing on slate.com. You'll never hit a paywall if you're a Slate Plus member. And of course, you'll be supporting our work and the work of our brilliant colleagues. These memberships are super important for Slate, so please sign up today at slate.com/culture plus. Again, that's slate.com/culture plus, or subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page. And then we have one more item of business before we return to our show. Dana, what holiday did we just celebrate?
Memorial Day.
And what season does that mean we are unofficially in?
Summer.
And what kind of music do we like to listen to during the summer?
The kind that makes you strut.
Indeed. It is time for our annual August tradition that we end up running in August, Summer Strut, where we ask you, our listeners, to send us the music that is making you stride happily through your world. We like upbeat and up-tempo, or we like your hammock struts, your mascara struts, all of the subversions of struts that we like. This is a glorious tradition where you guys crowdsource your favorite music. We listen to epically long Spotify playlists and return to you in early August with our picks of some new tunes to jam to. We are now officially taking submissions and will be for the next couple weeks. Please send us no more than 3 songs. We cannot listen to an entire album. You must exercise your own curating skills. No more than 3 songs. Please, if you can link to the song on Spotify or an audio service, that's great. But just the artist name and the track name works. Send everything to culturefest@slate.com with the subject line Strut25. Again, 3 songs. Send a link if you can. Artist name and track name is okay. Send it to culturefest@slate.com with the subject line Strut25.
If I can just add, we love to hear hot new songs of the summer or things that came out recently, but it can absolutely be a classic track from years back. You might not want to go with something so well known that everyone in the world's heard it a million times, but I love to get a mix of things from different eras, different genres, different countries, basically the most diverse list we can possibly compile.
All right, on with the show. Netflix's new show, Sirens, is a class dramedy that stars Julianne Moore as billionaire Michaela Kiki Kell, Millie Alcock as her live-in assistant/best friend Simone, and Meghan Fahey as Devon, Simone's chain-smoking sister who crashes back into her life after their father is diagnosed with early-onset dementia. Devon quickly discovers that Simone has not only adopted a whole new look and persona among the elite, she's also erased her difficult past, including her relationship with her sister. The show also stars Bill Camp as their father and Kevin Bacon as Kiki's CEO husband. Created by playwright Molly Smith Metzler, based on her play LMNOP, the show is both alluring and tonally a little hard to pin down, which I'm excited to discuss with you guys. But before we dive in, let's listen to a clip. This is from the first episode where Simone and Devon are arguing after Devon shows up unannounced and as a party is just beginning to return the fruit basket Simone sent her in lieu of any useful support.
No, Devon, no. Why?
Fuck you fucking bitch! You sent me an edible arrangement?
How did you even get this address?
I told you Dad got diagnosed with early onset dementia and you sent a fruit basket! Okay, I can see that you're upset.
This is a really bad time for me right now. We're about to host a reception here.
Okay,
so
then don't send me free, you stupid bitch!
Welcome, ladies. Sips and nibbles are in the back.
Thank you. What is this place? And why does everyone look like an Easter egg?
Look, Kevin, I can't talk right now. I am working. I work here.
You are always working. You've
Yes.
been sending me to voicemail for months.
Yes, it's the high season.
What the hell is a high season?
It's when society is here, like, summering. Who are you?
All right, joining us to talk about Sirens is Slate senior editor Rebecca Onion. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks. I love to come here.
Can you you reviewed this miniseries for Slate. Can you share your take on this rich people problems / Greek mythology drama? What'd you make of it?
I loved watching it. It was sort of packaged and presented in a different way than the experience of watching it is, which I think speaks to the tonal difficulties that you alluded to previously. There's definitely sort of like such a mix and mash of like mystery, drama, comedy, and this, as you said, kind of like pitchforks attitude of certain kinds of culture or TV that's been popular lately, kind of like looking at what rich people do and sort of laughing at it a little bit or marveling at it. And so Netflix sort of packaged it as, you know, this is maybe going to be a show about a girl, Simone, the younger sister, who is in a dangerous situation, and a sister, older sister, who's coming to help her, which sort of isn't really what this is about. I can see why they packaged it that way. It makes it seem like it's going to be more of like a beach read, kind of like thriller type experience. But really, for me, the Buffalo, New York versus whatever mystical island these rich people are on clash of cultures is what's like the funny, interesting part of the show. And I sort of just lost the mystery part. If that ever really sort of wholly existed in the show, that wasn't really what it was about for me.
It's very, and I found it very inhalable. Like it goes down like an oyster with a nice mignonette. But but like, what was it? And was it more than fun is the thing that I'm still puzzling through. Amy, I'm very curious what you made of it.
Yeah, I inhaled this on a plane, and I wanted to say, oh, I'm so glad I had a plane ride and an opening just to like watch this on my iPad back to back to back, because it definitely kept me awake. I was really engaged in it in the very beginning, especially because I think Meghan Fahey, you know, who plays the lead, who plays Devon, she's suddenly very interesting to me as kind of like a breakout actress in her 30s. She was just in that movie Drop, where she plays a girl who's like getting stalked by people airdropping things to her in a restaurant. And I think she has such an endearing, funny face. And liking her in White Lotus, getting to see her play like nasty, dirty, skeezy, sleazy, like picking up guys on boats and banging everyone, licking people all the time. Like watching her be so unhinged, I thought was just hilarious. And then it made me a little disappointed when I felt like around episode 4 and 5 out of a 5-episode series, she's suddenly just a lot more passive. And I was like, what happened to my gutter rat? I love my gutter rat. I love my gutter rat. Like, so angry about that fruit basket, which looked fantastic, by the way. High quality.
Well, I don't know. A fruit basket sitting in the sun on the steps. You could see that it was warm. I got her reaction to it. Meghan Fahey is great in this, and it's fun seeing her play the flip side, right? Like she was the privileged ice bitch in her White Lotus turn, with never a caftan out of place, and here she's the interloper or the person who's marveling, like more of the character that Aubrey Plaza played in White Lotus, of being sort of the outsider who thinks the whole world is suspicious / disgusting / perplexing / intimidating. This is one of those performances that makes you feel like we're going to be watching her for decades doing really interesting things. I think part of what I found tonally complicated was I was very moved by the family drama between the sisters and like the themes of what do you owe your family? Like, what do you owe your family of birth? Do you have to take care of your demented dad if he was a terrible dad? The emotional and Meghan Fahey is amazing. Bill Camp as the dad who's losing it is incredible, as he often is. I'm curious what you guys thought of Millie Alcock. Millie Alcock, I think, is pretty good as well. She has such a funny face. She doesn't quite seem like she has a Hollywood face. She seems like she has a like prep school field hockey captain face or something. Like it's not a normie face for the moment, which makes it interesting. And quite well cast for this like Lily Pulitzer symphony. But I found their emotional struggles with each other like quite real and moving in the middle of this symphony of ridiculousness of the big ritzy house and the upstairs downstairs and then Julianne Moore's kind of compelling cult leader who, you know, without spoiling too much, turns out to have more depths than that. But am I crazy? Did I just get like suckered by a soap, or was there a real there in that family drama?
I thought there was definitely a there. And the show kind of like doles out information about what actually happened in their childhood slowly along the way. And without ever sort of really totally showing it in a way that, I mean, maybe I did get suckered by a soap. Now that I'm describing it, I'm like, oh, doling out story. What does that sound like? But there's a way where what you just said, Julia, is making me sort of realize something, which is that by the end of the show, you sort of do get, so then you have the billionaire side of it, which is Kevin Bacon as the patriarch, who's kind of like the guy that people like to hang out with. You know, you have Devin, the older sister, kind of like going up to his eyrie at the top of, or is it airy? You have Devin, the older sister, going up to an airy at the top of a tower where he's like decorated it in his own way. He says, this is the only place in the house where I can like actually have my way. And he's like smoking big old spliffs with her. And he's just like the kind of like fun, normal guy. But then you have, you know, his wife, the Julianne Moore character, who's the second wife, who has this interesting past. And I felt like up until the very last episode, I didn't really see them as people, or I sort of saw him maybe a little bit as a person, but I don't know. Like, I felt like all the drama was on the Buffalo side. All the interesting stuff was on the Buffalo side. And they were kind of like a little bit cardboard cutout-y. And then you sort of do get to it by the end, that there is sort of like an emotional interplay going on there that's also interesting. But it's like it's given to you in like a choppy way.
Yeah, I think one of my issues with the Kevin Bacon character was that I never bought him as a billionaire, honestly. Like, he didn't seem to own the billions. He didn't seem to walk around with that sense of, I have all of these people of my command. Yeah, he just seemed like a normal guy wandering through this house. Like, who let Kevin Bacon loose in this mansion where he's a guest, that to only now learn that his wife isn't letting people eat bread? And he likes clam digging. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm being stereotypical. Maybe like I have, as the Meghan Fahey character says in this, I have rich people Tourette's, where just when rich people come up, she just starts cursing and getting really angry. But I thought that he would seem a little more anything, I guess, like oblivious, contented, snobbish. Certain that the world belonged to him. You know, he just kind of seemed like a nice guy. Maybe billionaires are nice people, but I didn't.
I guess I felt like his arc, to me, that was part of the interplay between him and the Julianne Moore character, where essentially she has acquired so much power as Mrs. Kell that he's forgotten that he's the mister, in that all of her power derives from him. That basically she's subjugated him to her own power, and part of the arc of the show is him beginning to interrogate that and make some related decisions. And because it's Julianne Moore, you're like, sure, if Julianne Moore came up and told me I didn't have any power anymore and it all belonged to her, I'd be like, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, she's, you know, it's so funny because obviously Nicole Kidman has been playing this kind of like mysterious rich lady character for, you know, we've seen her in, I can think of 4 separate roles like this in the last like 3 years. And you know, Julianne Moore is not an interchangeable Oscar-winning redhead, but it's funny to see her doing it in her own way, which to me is like much deeper and scarier than most of those Kidman performances. Like, she adds a gravitas to it that both, again, elevates the whole thing, even though the whole thing's a little soapy janky, and made the Kevin Bacon character more legible and comprehensible to me, I think.
Her performance does have that kind of mystical, ethereal waviness to it. You know, she seems sort of floating and cult leadery walking through the series, which is probably why my favorite scenes always involved like her minions, Lisa, Astrid, and Chloe, that like Greek chorus of girls who just all speak in that identical sing-songy, talky, complimenty way. I think that's what I enjoyed about her and this world of rich people is that she's not just coming in like sniping at people, bossing around, hard charging. It's about that phony, nice way of everything being lovely. Like nibbles over here, we adore you. And I find it so chilling, like that cold, friendly sense of control. But I think where I got thrown off is, this title being Sirens, right? And like Sirens comes to mean a bunch of different things in the show. Like Sirens is the SOS code that the sisters have for each other that they send back and forth. Like, I need you. You have to come. You have to help me. And it's the fact that Simone has been ignoring Devon's sirens, that Devon has to show up and be like, I'm here. You need to pay attention to this. But it also felt like the show was trying to imply, that sense of siren control, that Julianne Moore is this powerful woman steering people to these rocky shores and always taking people to cliffs and dashing them against the rocks, you're thinking. But weirdly, the sense I had at the very end of the show was that the men have just been in control the whole time, right? I don't know if y'all felt this way, but the way things got sorted out, who was who wound up where, felt like it was all just about a guy coming in and saying, all right, I'm going to lay this out the way it should have been.
Yeah, well, I liked that, though. That seemed real. I mean, I don't know. Nothing in this show was really real, probably. This is not like adolescence or something here. But that seemed to really get across like what we've been seeing all along. Like it was an ending that to me was satisfying because it sort of drew a bunch of the threads together from the show and was like, actually, nothing that you thought was happening was actually happening.
All right. Well, the show is Sirens. It is somewhat silly, but also has some real meat underneath. I would recommend it for any upcoming plane ride, or I watched some on a ferry, which seemed appropriate.
Perfect.
I was like going to an island. I was at one point going to an island. I watched it on literally planes, trains, ferries, and automobiles.
Amazing.
Wherever your summer travels are taking you, whether or not they are taking you to the cliffs of Port Haven. The show is Sirens. It's on Netflix. It stars Julianne Moore. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us to discuss.
Thanks for having me.
Today's episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that feeling when you're trying to book a trip? Too many choices, too much fine print, and no real way to know if you're actually getting the best deal? Smart Travel helps you skip that stress and book with confidence. On Smart Travel, NerdWallet's travel journalists break down the financial side of travel with research-backed insights. They compare perks, costs, and trade-offs to help you travel and spend smarter. The nerds cover topics like which airport lounge memberships are worth it, and which ones just give you stale crackers and a crowded power outlet. Curious to know which airline fees are actually avoidable and which ones aren't? Turn to the nerds. They even talk about how to maximize your hotel points for real savings, not just free bottled water, and when trip insurance is worth it. So if you're trying to figure out whether that fancy travel credit card justifies the annual fee, or if it's just a really expensive way to flex at the airport, give the nerds a listen. Before you book, learn how to get the most out of your travel dollars. Follow Smart Travel on your favorite podcast app, and stay tuned at the end of this episode to hear the Smart Travel trailer.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices, and that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies, so you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
I listened to all 37 tracks of Morgan Wallen's new album, and I have a few things I'd like to tell him, said Slate music critic Carl Wilson in his new review of the country singer's new release, I'm the Problem. In it, Carl has a faux back and forth with Morgan Wallen's lyrics, many from this new album, trying to reckon with the most popular man in American music. I'm the Problem debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, making it Wallen's third album to top the chart after 2023's One Thing at a Time and 2021's Dangerous, the double album. It's also currently the biggest album debut of 2025, with 462 million on-demand streams, all despite ongoing controversies surrounding Wallen, including the 2021 incident where he used a racial slur and his more recent abrupt exit from Saturday Night Live. Joining us to talk about I'm the Problem is Slate's music critic, Carl Wilson. Welcome back, Carl.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Your piece for Slate is wonderful and also makes clear that you felt that this was hazard duty, having to listen to all 37 songs of Morgan Wallen's. So tell us a little bit about your historical sense of Wallen and maybe pick a song for us to listen to start off our conversation.
Sure. Wallen, aside from an early appearance on The Voice in 2014, where he was kicked out kind of midway through, he's from East Tennessee. He's was a high school baseball player and kind of intended to go in that direction until he had an ACL injury, which turned him towards his second love, which was music. Not country music, particularly at the time. He was a Nickelback and Lil Wayne fan are the two things that he most often mentions. But everybody who heard him sing basically said, "You sound country, you have to go country." And that's what he did. And so he started emerging around 2017. He had a big country hit with a song in collaboration with Florida Georgia Line. And then around 2021, when Dangerous came out, started really making a big, broad impact, and now has had several of the biggest hits, period, of the 2020s. And as you mentioned, his last couple of albums set records for the length of time that they've stayed in the album charts. They're both still in the album charts. So he's one to reckon with. He arguably is the most popular American musician who is not Taylor Swift. And yet critics, including me, have mostly neglected him over the past 8 years. Generally, out of sort of disinterest. He seemed kind of like a dull, kind of just next step in country. And then these controversies began, and particularly the racial slur controversy in 2021, I think made everyone kind of dwell on that as that's what they talked about when we talked about Morgan Wallen. And I think now this year, it really feels like there's some sense, looking at the coverage across a lot of mainstream and high profile venues, that it's time to come back and start wrestling with Morgan Wallen beyond just the fallout of that incident and a few other of his kind of drunken shenanigans over the years, to actually look at the music and look at what people are listening to. And so that's what I tried to do in this piece in the course of sort of a day and a half's worth of listening to a 2-hour, 37-track album. So if there's a sense of siege in the piece, I'm afraid it was kind of hard to escape. At the end of the piece, I sort of declare myself done with him forever. And I think that was more an emotional reaction than an intellectual one.
All right. Well, if you're going to be not done with him for just the duration of this segment, what song of his should we listen to?
He really made a crossover impact last year with the song with Post Malone, I Had Some Help. And there's a new Post Malone duet on this song called I Ain't Coming Back, which is one of the biggest singles off it. So maybe we should hear I Ain't Coming Back.
Half of this town has got a name for me, and I can't say I don't agree. But the night I said I'm leaving, I turned into Richard Petty. Broke my heart so I got even in my 97 Chevy. Now I'm walking on this water mixed with Johnny Walker Black. There's a lot of reasons I ain't Jesus, but the main one is that I ain't coming back.
I mean, it's not funny. It's not a funny lyric. Amy, I think you had thoughts about this particular collab.
I did. Yeah. I mean, Morgan Wallen has that kind of sound where as soon as I hear the drum machine comes in, I immediately picture that I'm at Zara looking at sweaters. Do you know what I mean? We're like, this is pleasant. I don't mind it. But then also, as a person who grew up in like Texas and Oklahoma, as soon as the song opens with I'm a redneck, I immediately get really turned off. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You don't need to brag about that if you really are. You know, he is interesting to me. Like, what I really think of when I listen to like this whole album, which I did for you guys. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you for your service.
It made me think of how I do actually love kind of thrusty, easygoing, sort of emotional pop like this. It reminded me almost of like kind of like Eastern European pop from the 80s, which I deeply, deeply, deeply love. I like little elements of every song, but in almost every song, I'm waiting for the song to do something, and it never actually does it. It never actually kicks it up a notch. And I'm like, yeah, that was my frustration.
That's so interesting because I have that feeling less about the songs than about the album, and it's so, I don't know if interesting is the word, thought-provoking to listen to such a sprawling album where it does not feel that it's been conceived as an album experience. It just feels like a big satchel full of songs. And this is more critical of him than I mean to sound, but it feels almost like an album for the AI slop era where it's just like, we're going to just generate a ton of stuff, flood the zone. You'll probably like some of it. Because almost all of them have either a lyrical turn that's pretty fun and funny. Like he writes some of the songs, he co-writes them with like Nashville's finest.
49 of Nashville's finest. Yeah. 49 writers.
There's plenty of good songcraft in it and plenty of like what I love about country music, which is like the sort of wry poetics, the lyrical turn, the sort of more overt sense of humor than you find in a lot of other pop. Like country music is trying to make you laugh more often than a lot of other genres, I think. And there's good lines in almost every song. And in maybe 70% of them, there were like either good swoony melodies or good kind of like poppy beats that you felt like you could ride to. But I found myself just being like, okay, but is any of these a whole song that I like? Like, does any of these cohere? And I did in the end find a couple. So I got to confess here / assert / proudly proclaim that Morgan Wallen is one of my son's favorite artists. He loves Last Night. He loves the Post Malone collab. And he was thrilled for this new album. What he saw me listening to Lies, Lies, Lies last night. And he's like, that's on the new one because he knows it as the single that dropped. And my son also really likes Coldplay, like it's big, poppy, rocky. And I do like a lot of it. Like I get where you're coming from, Carl. I think for me, part of the problem, there's the musical sprawl of it, which just feels like undisciplined and a little like cavalier about all of our time and attention. But then there's the persona and the fact that one of my primary responses to this album is that I like feel that his fans and friends should stage an intervention and take him to rehab. He seems depressed and addicted. There's so much about whiskey. I can hear how square I sound as I say that in that tone of voice, but it seems like he doesn't have the healthiest relationship with alcohol, and he sings about it all the fucking time. It's like a 37-song cry for help. I'm trying to figure out which is the most depressing drinking song. Drinking Till It Does was pretty bad.
'Cause I've tried drowning in a whiskey river, and I ain't found my way down to the bottom yet. I've tried burning out the things I remember, but there's still a lot about you I can't forget. There was a time.
Did you guys find the whiskey bit? I mean, another classic of country is to talk about booze.
I mean,
but
first it's very
so
country,
much.
and second it's kind of a calling card of his at this point, and has been for kind of the whole career. One of his first hits was called Whiskey Glasses, which was like, kind of whiskey glasses as in spectacles as well as glasses of whiskey. But yeah, I mean, like, there's a thing that kind of unites the substance abuse side of it and the sprawling playlist side of it, and which is like, I find it very helpful to realize that Morgan Wallen is basically country's Drake, and Drake does all of these things. And like the appeal is similar in a sense that like on paper, it doesn't sound that good, but there's kind of a low impact approach to it. Morgan Wallen is a really good singer on a basic technical level, but he's not showy at all. It's like conversational, it's like podcast host, it's a little bit rapper, and he's drunk or stoned or hungover and hanging out and bitching about the things the world has done wrong, bitching about the things that he's done wrong, all of that kind of like, it's very made for this kind of one-on-one intimacy, and also to be able to function as background, and also for you to be able to pluck out of the 37 songs the 4 that you like and put them in your playlist, or Spotify can automate how they get put in your playlist. All of this stuff is like the streaming economy stuff that Drake was one of the early ones to really figure out. And Wallen is definitely drawing from that playbook on a bunch of levels. And, there's some things that are distasteful in both of their cases from that. And also they're really good craftsmen on a certain level. And that also has to be appreciated. So yeah, like that's sort of how I process all of those aspects of it.
I feel like we should listen to a little bit of I'm the Problem since you mentioned Taylor. Like Taylor obviously also recently had the hit Antihero with the lyric, "It's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me." And he is very explicitly mentioning this. It's almost an ironical title because he seems to think the problem is, sometimes he thinks the problem is him. There's a song, Kick Myself, in which he seems to suggest that it is actually he himself who is the problem. But in many other songs, it is either you, the woman, who is the problem, or you, the whiskey, that is the problem, or some combination of women and whiskey who are the problem. And, Taylor's persecution complex is not her most charming quality either. She knows she knows that that's kind of unattractive. And I feel like each of her albums has one song that's like, you guys don't understand me and it's so hard to be me, et cetera, et cetera. She always does it with some level of self-awareness, and she is still trying to charm you. Like she's basically trying to talk you out of thinking that she's doing a woe is me, or she's aware that her doing a woe is me is kind of ridiculous. Like it's always there, but she's so canny about it. And it's really interesting to listen to his version, which is just
Wallen has
self-pitying.
No sense of absurdity about that situation.
Yeah, she is like 7 layers of audience manipulation ahead of him, which doesn't necessarily make it better, but it makes it more palatable to me. But let's listen to a little bit of I'm the Problem.
I guess I'm the problem. And your mess never do no wrong. If I'm so awful, then why'd you stick around this long and there fits the whiskey? And why you keep on pulling it off the shelf? You hate that when you look at me, you halfway see yourself, and it got me thinking, if I'm the problem, well, you might be the reason.
It's so nasty.
Yeah, the little miss never do no wrong is a particularly annoying turn of phrase. But yeah, I mean, like songs like this are the things that, that drive me the craziest, where it feels like, I feel like I'm listening to like a Manosphere YouTube video at points on this album. And, and I don't think that is the total of Morgan Wallen. And I don't think his persona was really built on being controversial, on being mean. I don't think those things are core to what he tries to put across. But on this album, it feels like it's really, really prominent in a way that's more off-putting than in the past.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, lyrically, my favorite song was Smile. Yeah, that was the song that's about, like, him hanging out with his girlfriend at a bar and a bunch of people, and a bartender's like, let's take a group picture. And he realizes his girlfriend is smiling in the picture and that she hasn't smiled around him in a long time. And I thought that was a very sweet and small and really pointed observation. Like that exact moment of like, what have I done here? Not like I'm going to solve it by the end of the song, but like I'm realizing something's up and maybe I am the problem and the reason.
We're alone together. It was good to see you smile. Girl, it's been a while. It was good to see you smile, even if it was just for the picture.
I'm glad I actually picked that one to listen to, because it does. I felt myself again being like, it's gonna do something cool, isn't it? And it just doesn't.
Right. It doesn't ever quite. You're like waiting for the beat to drop, and it doesn't.
There's sort of two roads that Morgan Wallen could do. There's a couple of songs in here that get a little bit culture war-y, a little bit Trumpy, a little bit pandering in that direction. And then there are songs like Smile, and it's like more smile, less self-pity and coiled resentment, please.
In any event, the new album is I'm the Problem. The artist is Morgan Wallen. You will hear him soon in a Zara, if nowhere else. Thank you so much, Carl, for joining us for this. Would you ever do us the honor of sticking around to endorse?
I would love to do that.
This episode is brought to you by eBay. We all have that piece. The one that's so you've basically become known for it. And if you don't yet, fashionistas, you'll find it on eBay. That Miu Miu red leather bomber, the Custo Barcelona cowboy top, or that Patagonia fleece in the 2017 colorway. All these finds are all on eBay, along with millions of more main character pieces backed by authenticity guarantee. eBay is the place for pre-loved and vintage fashion. eBay, things people love.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase of 16 weeks, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
All right, Amy, let's start with you, my honored co-host. What are you loving this week?
This week, I am loving the new season of the British game show Taskmaster. Are y'all Taskmaster heads?
I do not know anything about Taskmaster. What's Taskmaster?
Oh, it's the absolute greatest show. We are now in the 19th season. And there's there's this gruff, wonderful taskmastery man. His name is Greg Davies, and he has a minion. And every series, they have 5 different comedians, and they put them through impossible challenges. You know, physical, mental hurdles, ways of showing how different people think, ridiculous things involving giant rubber ducks. Like, it is just mean and ruthless and funny, and everybody's just making fun of each other the whole time. Greatest thing on the planet. Very short, very PC, very funny, very mean. And now in their 19th season, they have an American on it, Jason Mantzoukas. And so I have been looking forward to this forever. You know, Jason Mantzoukas is an LA comic that I adore. He has such a strange way of thinking. And so, yeah, we're only 4 episodes into the new season, and I'm just absolutely adoring it. Like, if you really want to see people have breakdowns doing impossible things, just the very first challenge, basically, you're put into a room, you are blindfolded, they put 2 gigantic jars on each of your hands, and how are you going to get your hands off of the table? They're filled with water, and you can't move. It's just stuff like that, where you would just see people, I've seen people have complete sobbing breakdowns on the show, but not in a mean way, just in like a, you have broken me comic, sir. It's marvelous.
All right. I think I got to add that to the roster. Thank you. Carl, what have you got?
Well, first, I want to 100% co-sign that. Taskmaster, a completely addictive experience. My endorsement is possibly the most uncool endorsement I've ever come up with, both in that it's a combination of 2 very uncool things, which are improv comedy and musical theater, and also in the sense that it's about a project that's kind of nearing its end. It's a podcast called Off Book, which has been going for about 8 years now, by a duo of LA-based comedians, Zach Reno and Jessica McKenna. I tried listening to the podcast years ago and couldn't get into it. And then I discovered what I needed was to see them do this on video. What they do is make up full-length musicals on the spot. They have a band of improvising musicians with them. And they come up with a premise in conversation and then sort of transition into the musicals. So what I discovered this winter is a video of them on YouTube doing a long improvised musical in which they play all the members of a high school mock trial team who are attending their end of the year group banquet. And it depicts all of the dynamics between the team, the budding romances, straight and gay, the rivalries between the dominant prosecution lawyers and the beleaguered defense attorneys, not to mention the very marginal pretrial attorneys, all with this kind of hilarious knowingness. It becomes very clear over the course of the musical that they were in mock trial in high school. But they mind-bogglingly make a story out of this whole scenario while keeping these like 8 characters juggling in between the two of them. And I particularly became a helpless convert after the song in which the defense lawyers pay tribute to their biggest inspiration, Atticus Finch.
That morality is a cinch. I remember Atticus Finch.
And so from there, I've become a little obsessed and joined their like Clubhouse website where you can watch videos, and now gotten into the audio only versions. So it's Off Book, the improvised musical podcast. That particular video, the mock trial one, is on YouTube under the name Off Book Live from the Curious Comedy Theater. And yeah, geek out with me, please.
All right. These both sound very, very snackable. All right. I've got 2 endorsements this week. The first is eating a hot dog on the ferry. I don't know if you have a life that puts you on ferries, the kind with cars on the bottom and passengers on top. But in the same way that I have decried the people who fly in airplanes with their window shades down like cretins who don't understand that flight is a miracle and that the privilege of looking at the earth from the sky is one of the great glories of modern life. And if you want to sit there with your window shut and look at a screen, you are officially like one of those like flesh sacks in the Matrix who sucks. So I have a similar feeling about ferries, which is like you got to go to the top deck. You can't sit inside. You got to go outside and let your hair whip around. And ideally, if you eat meat, you got to get a mediocre hot dog off of that greasy griddle that's been going back and forth between port and port for as long as possible, and slather it with ketchup and eat that and look at the ocean and the sky. So eating hot dogs on the ferry, that's number 1. Number 2 is my sons are enjoying the start of the Mets season, and as a result, we decided to watch Moneyball. Although I guess that's not particularly relevant to the Mets strategy at the moment, but they'd never seen it, and so we rewatched it a couple of weeks ago. And I thought that was a movie about baseball, but it's actually a movie about like they used Moneyball to tell a story about ambition and life, and like it's sort of a richer and lovelier movie than I thought it was. I thought it was just kind of a like sports competence procedural with a lot of spreadsheets like whizzing up the screen, and they milk a lot out of Brad Pitt brooding in the cars he's driving, but I ended up being moved by it and the way that it explores what you choose to do with your God-given talents and time on this earth. So hot dogs on the ferry and Moneyball. Maybe pair them, maybe don't. Well, no, don't pair them on the ferry. Do not. You got to be looking at the horizon on the ferry. All right. Amy, thank you so much for joining me today and holding down the fort.
It has been my pleasure.
And Carl, thank you so much for your Morgan Wallen listening and for coming along to explain him to all of us.
Thank you, Julianne. Great to talk to you for the first time, Amy.
You'll find links to some of the things we talked about today on our show page. That's slate.com/culturefest. And you can email us at culturefest@slate.com. Our introductory theme music is by the composer Nicholas Bertel. Our production assistant is Daniel Hirsch. Our producer is Benjamin Frisch, back and better than ever. And for Amy Nicholson, Dana Stevens, Rebecca Onion, and Carl Wilson, I'm Julia Turner. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Today's episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. I'm Megan Coyle.
And I'm Sally French. We're NerdWallet travel writers who help you turn dream trips into trips you can actually afford.
Because let's be honest, dream trips are usually synonymous with spending money.
But my dream is to not spend much money at all.
That's where Smart Travel comes in. We break down the best ways to stretch your travel dollars, whether it's scoring an upgrade without selling your soul, decoding loyalty programs so you can actually get something out of them, or figuring out if that ultra discount airline ticket is too good to be true.
It usually is.
And while we're at it, we'll show you how to turn canceled flights into lounge dinners and free hotel stays. Spoiler, it involves a lot of patience and a little bit of research. But don't worry, we've already done the heavy lifting. Because being financially savvy doesn't mean you have to skip out on an adventure. It just means you're the genius who paid less for it.
Each week, we bring you travel news, expert insights, and even some of our own travel wins and mishaps. All so you can travel more while paying less. And hey, you'll even have some fun along the way. So if you're ready to make your travel budget work harder and smarter, follow Smart Travel on your favorite podcast app.
First up, smarter travel. See you soon.